Hello, my name is Xavier. I'm here with Haley, Michelle, and Gerald, and we will be presenting on how the audience connect to a superhero's backstory. Our question that led our research was, how does the turning point of superhero's backstory, how does the turning point of superhero's backstory cause the audience to connect with it? If you don't already know what a turning point it is, it's basically where the protagonist, the main character of the comic or the movie, goes through a major change, to become the superhero. So examples, we have Bruce Wayne turning into Batman, we have Peter Parker turning into Spider-Man, and Tony Stark turning into Iron Man.
So each superhero has their own turning point, which is caused by trauma, the gain of power, or the acknowledgement of their own flaws. And we as the audience are familiar with the general backstory, which is the traumatic event that is portrayed as the death of the character's parents. The gain of power, when a character gains their power, it gives them a sense of responsibility, and that leads them to decide whether they use their power for good or the complete opposite. And so when they get their super suit, it leads them to settle their flaws, because it's another sort of identity in a way, and it's their superhero side. So some superheroes that represent these points are Batman and Spider-Man.
So when Batman was a kid, his name was Bruce Wayne. When he was a kid, he went out to watch a movie with his parents, and after the movie was finished, they unknowingly wandered into the wrong part of Gotham, called Crime Alley. And so Crime Alley, it's the most notorious part of Gotham, and sadly his parents were mugged and killed by a mugger, and so Bruce Wayne felt trauma, and he felt like he had to avenge his parents, and so he swore that he would protect anyone in Gotham from experiencing the same evil that happened to him, and he took on the mask of Batman and protected the city. Spider-Man, he came from a lowly background. He was the nerdy kid at school. He wasn't that popular, and when he was in his lab, he was bitten by a radioactive spider, which gave him these superpowers that could be connected with a spider, such as web slinging, wall crawling, super strength, etc. And immediately, instead of using it for good, he used it for monetary gain, such as fighting in a wrestling match to gain the reward at the end. And soon after, his uncle was killed by a burglar. And Spider-Man realized that he needed to use his powers for good, and he swore to protect the city.
How does the turning point relate to the audience? New York is used as a major hub in the Marvel Universe. Many characters are seen being related to New York, such as Captain America, who was born in Brooklyn, Tony Stark, Iron Man, who has Stark Towers in Manhattan, and also Spider-Man, who resides in Queens. This shows and connects with the audience because many have visited or wanted to visit those cities. Traumatic events, like Haley said, can be the death of a loved one, and many members of the audience have experienced that or know someone who has experienced that. It connects to the audience because it shows that superheroes aren't all invincible, and they all have a soft spot, just like everyday ordinary people.
So looking at this from a scientific standpoint, the audience is able to connect with superhero background stories because of a theory called the social learning theory. This theory was developed by Canadian psychologist Albert Bandura. So what this theory says is that human behavior is learned from observing models. So as members of the audience, when viewing at superheroes, when learning about their backstories and the traumatic events they've overcome, the audience becomes inspired to do the same things in their own life and to take responsibility of their actions and to overcome the same obstacles. So next we're going to see a video that's going to explain the four parts of this theory, and it's going to explain how the audience is able to connect with what it sees in real life.
In this slide here, we see Bandura's social learning theory, a four-step modeling process chart, and we have the steps, the 4 steps in the left column, and then the process. that modeling process there on the right column. So first we have attention. In order to learn, you need to be paying attention. Anything that detracts your attention is going to have a negative effect on observational learning. If the model is interesting or there is a novel aspect to the situation, you are far more likely to dedicate your full attention to learning. The second step then is retention, remembering what you paid attention to, so building on that first step. This includes symbolic coding, mental images, cognitive organization, symbolic rehearsal, as well as motor rehearsal. Then third step would be reproduction. Once you have paid attention to the model and retained the information, it is time to actually perform the behavior you observed. The further practice of the learned behavior leads to improvement and skill advancement. Finally, the fourth step is motivation of Bandura's social learning theory four-step modeling process. And in motivation, the process is, in order for observational learning to be successful, you have to be motivated to imitate the behavior that has been modeled. Reinforcement and punishment play an important role in motivation. While experiencing these motivators can be highly effective, so can observing other experiences with some type of reinforcement or punishment. So if someone is, for example, rewarded for showing up early to a class each day, those who show up late may be more motivated to show up early in order to receive the reward. I've included a further reading list here on Bandura. You can see he's quite an accomplished scholar, and these are just a sampling of some of his books, some of his works he's written. And so you can go ahead and get a hold of some of these. I'd encourage you to continue just after this brief introduction of these three men to continue your study on them. A lot of people have done, a lot of scholars in the last several years have done updated versions of each of these gentlemen's theories. I do want you to keep that in mind that these are theories, these aren't concrete, that generalizations, that everybody is this way, but these are just some observations and theories. So make sure you keep that in mind as you go out and do some more study on this and read.
So in conclusion, the turning point is an event that the audience can relate to due to similar settings or similar backstories and aspects of those backstories.
And this is our bridge geography. Thank you for your time.
All right.